not the champ of being the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink is that Tucker Carlson I still feel like I'm not even in the top 100, but I want to pursue that aim of endeavoring to call out smugness, lying, and pomposity. But more importantly, to help us see where the aspect of politics and religion intersect. I went to Chautauqua Institution for the Advocates for Balance at Chautauqua's presentation by Dr. Khalil Habib, who is a professor at Hillsdale College. He's the professor of political philosophy and American political thought. And he's an immigrant. His family immigrated from the Middle East. When he came over, he saw this word progressive. He thought, yeah, that's what I want to be. Who can be against progress? But as he looked into it more and more, he basically concluded that it's regressive. The progressives take us on a path to regression. As I listened to him talk, there was a lot of political things. In fact, political history, Woodrow Wilson, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, leaders in progressive thought and how that progressive thought has impacted politically our nation. But as I talked, or as I listened, I came to a point of asking them a question. I asked them this question. People think about progressive as politics, but isn't it more theological than politics? And he said, yes, you're right. Because as he was in his presentation, he talked about the nature of man. The nature of man, according to progressives, is naturally good. Man's fine, he's good. So the thought with progressives is, get somebody at the top, get somebody in charge, and he will make all the difference in the world when it comes to politics. When you think of Woodrow Wilson, he had an alter ego of sorts. His name was Colonel Edmund Mandel House. And he wrote the book, Philip Drew, Administrator. It kind of connected. Meaning, this book basically, I think, pushed the progressive agenda ahead. And it's somebody that I think Woodrow Wilson wanted to emulate. But it all goes back to the nature of man. The progressive thinks that man is essentially good, totally in contrast to what the Bible has to say. In fact, Habib asked the question, what's the alternate point of view? What was the view basically of our founders? And somebody said, human nature is flawed. Now, I shouted from the other point of the room, other side of the room, I said, depraved! I don't think he heard it. But there's a difference between flawed and depraved. But you get the point. Progressive thinks man's nature is good. On the other hand, our founders, and of course those in the evangelical faith, believe that the nature of man is depraved. It's also interesting to see how, as progressives think about their political thought, there's a lack of understanding about absolute morality, absolute truth, a fixed point of truth, because for them, it's just a matter of circumstances and conditions as to why things develop politically as they do. And this is what gets me about people who are progressive. Progressives, like in the Woodrow Wilson administration, were racists. It's in their writing. Woodrow Wilson hailed the movie Birth of a Nation, which highlighted the Ku Klux Klan. And here you see people today gravitating towards the progressives. And you see them gravitate in ways that manifests itself politically in all the gender agenda we're looking at. Now, of course, they're not the racists they were 100 years ago, but now they take up something that is totally contrary to what Scripture teaches with the aspect of sex, gender, sexuality. Progressives lead us to regression. Progressives lead us to top-down government. Progressives lead us to concentration, accumulation, centrality of power. When you look at our founders and what they gave us, you see the decentralization of power. You see the distribution of power. You see power at the top, theoretically, drastically limited, while the power at the bottom amongst the people is enlarged. The more politics are local, the more accountability there is in government. And we're seeing the opposite in what you observe in the Biden administration. Basically any Democrat politician, because they've fallen hook, line, and sinker for the progressive political agenda. But deeper than that, they're on board with the theological agenda as well. So the root goes very deep. And we as Christians need to proclaim that theology from the Bible about the nature of man is evil. The heart is desperately wicked and deceitful above all things. Who can know it? We need to start there and show how the redemptive work of Christ fits in to retrieve man's depraved nature and convert him in ways that can only be done through Christ's work on the cross. Well, unlike Tony Kornheiser, pardon the interruption, I cannot promise you that I'll do better the next time. And unlike Tony Kornheiser, I will wave the flag of sackcloth. The flag of sackcloth for humility. And by the way, you see, the backdrop is a white rose. And Sophie Scholl was part of the White Rose Society that had a minority point of view. Even so, she spoke up with her friends, though it cost her dearly. So, again, this show is basically dedicated to her and the White Rose Society.